Welcome to the second part of our Norse mythology journey. In the first segment, we explored gods associated with order and stability. The wise All-Father Odin, the thunderous Thor, the fierce Valkyries, the beautiful Freya and Freyr, and more. We witnessed the creation of the world from the body of the slain giant Ymir and marveled at the world tree Yggdrasil. In this second segment, we will shift our focus to the darker, more chaotic forces at play, gods and events that destabilize the cosmos, bringing it to the brink of destruction. We will discover that the main culprit at the heart of this turmoil is none other than Loki, the trickster god. But before we begin, we will need the guidance of Bragi, the god of storytelling, as he introduces us to even more Norse gods. Number 16. Bragi, the god of skaldic poetry. A skald is a medieval Scandinavian poet known for composing and performing intricate and sophisticated poetry. As the protector of skalds, Bragi embodies a highly revered literary tradition in Norse culture. But let's see more precisely what skaldic poetry is. Unlike Eddic poetry, which focuses on mythological themes and cosmic events, skaldic poetry commemorates worldly human achievements, the lives of kings and warriors, or battles and other historical events. The Poetic Edda's authors have remained anonymous, creating the illusion of an impersonal and timeless voice that reflects universal truths and eternal narratives. In contrast, skaldic poetry was composed and performed by identifiable poets, called skalds, who used complex literary devices, adding a personal and immediate dimension to their work. Skaldic poetry is known for its intricate metrical structure and the use of kennings, which are elaborate metaphors, for example, referring to war as weather of weapons, and to a warrior as feeder of ravens. Bragi is the god of skalds. He is represented as a bearded man with a harp, and he symbolizes wisdom, inspiration, poetic skill, storytelling, and verbal artistry. He is the son of Odin and Frigg, and the husband of Idunn, who is the goddess of youth and immortality. The marriage of Bragi and Idunn is highly symbolic, as the poetry and music embodied by Bragi are forms through which time itself is renewed and preserved, in a way that is reminiscent of Idunn's life-giving apples. Number 17. Idunn, the goddess of youth. Idunn is often represented as a beautiful goddess holding the golden, magical apples that bestow immortality upon the gods. In Norse mythology, it was believed that the gods didn't age because they consumed these apples. Idunn was the only one who knew how to cultivate them. She imbued them with rejuvenating magic, so her role in maintaining the gods' youth and vitality was crucial. One of the Norse myths focuses on the disaster that befalls the gods if Idunn is not there to help them. It is said that one day the god Loki was caught by the eagle giant Thiazi and had to swear that he would help him in kidnapping Idunn. Using his cunning, Loki told Idunn that he had seen apples even more marvelous than her own in a nearby forest. Incredulous, Idunn decided to follow him to that forest, bringing her own apples in a basket to compare. The giant Thiazi was waiting for her in the forest. He swooped down, clutching her from the ground, and carried her off to Jotunheim. Soon enough, the gods started to feel the unpleasant effects of aging. Their strength waned, their skin became wrinkled, and their hair turned gray. They realized that Loki was responsible for Idunn's absence and asked him to bring her back. Loki borrowed Freya's cloak, which allowed him to transform into a falcon. He flew to Jotunheim and sneaked into Idunn's room. In order to save Idunn, Loki temporarily transformed her into a walnut, then grabbed her in his claws. Thiazi noticed their escape and started following Loki. However, in the end, he fell into a fire trap set by the gods and perished in the flames. With Idunn back among them, the gods regained their youth and cheerfulness. It seemed that the entire ordeal was over. However, Thiazi's daughter soon came to Asgard, determined to avenge her father. Number 18. Skadi, the goddess of snow. Skadi is a goddess of hunting and the wilderness, embodying both the harshness of the Scandinavian winter and the delicate beauty of snow. She is Thiazi's daughter, and she was furious to learn that her father had been killed. She came to Asgard, seeking revenge, but the gods only wanted peace. To appease her, they offered her the opportunity to choose a husband from their ranks, but there was a catch. She had to choose based only on the appearance of their feet. Skadi was deceived into picking Njord because she mistakenly believed his feet belonged to Baldur, the god of light. Another promise the gods made to Skadi was that they would make her laugh at her wedding. However, Skadi was in no mood for laughter. Loki, in his usual clever fashion, came up with the idea to tie a rope between his private parts and a goat and put on a tug-of-war show in front of Skadi. This ridiculous spectacle made everyone, including the bride, burst into laughter. Finally, Odin cemented their alliance with Skadi by honoring Thiazi's memory. He placed Thiazi's eyes in the night sky as two guiding stars. After the wedding, Njord took Skadi to Noatun, his seaside residence, far from the mountains she loved. Skadi deeply longed for the mountains. She wanted to be free and alone as she once was, to ski across the snow-covered peaks and catch snowflakes in her palms. Skadi eventually left Njord and returned to the mountains she cherished. Number 19. Loki, the god of mischief. Loki occupies a unique position in Norse mythology as a god who is both admired for his wit and reviled for his wickedness. He is the son of the giant Farbauti and the goddess Laufey, making him technically a Jotun, yet the Aesir gods adopted him as one of their own. It is said that Odin and Loki became blood brothers through a sacred ritual, although the reason why this bond was formed remains a mystery. Loki plays an important role in Asgard, and he is involved in many Norse myths. Unlike the other gods, who are often depicted as noble and just, Loki's character is marked by cunning, deceit, and a penchant for causing trouble. This frequently brings him into conflict with the other gods, particularly Thor, whose straightforward nature often clashes with Loki's trickery and unpredictability. Thor and Loki often embark on adventures together, where Loki's cunning complements Thor's strength. For example, when Thor disguises himself as Freya to retrieve his hammer from the giants, Loki accompanies him as a bridesmaid, ready to offer clever explanations for any of Thor's blunders. Loki's status as a master of deceit is solidified by his ability to shapeshift into various forms: horses, fish, birds, even old women. In the form of a fly, he attempts to sabotage the work of the blacksmith dwarves Brokkr and Eitri to save his head. He becomes an absolute pest, stinging Brokkr's skin in an effort to disrupt their work. But this doesn't stop the two brothers from winning the competition and, as punishment, sewing Loki's mouth shut. In another story, the gods hire a mysterious worker to build a wall around Asgard that would protect them from the giants of Jotunheim. However, the payment the worker demands is unreasonable. He wants the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya if he manages to finish the wall on time. The gods realize that the only way to avoid this disastrous payment is to delay the worker, so Loki transforms into a mare to lure away the worker's powerful magical horse, Svadilfari. The worker is unable to finish the wall on time, and Loki, in the form of a mare, gives birth to the eight-legged horse Sleipnir, who becomes Odin's mount. Other children that Loki had are Narfi and Vali, with his devoted wife Sigyn, and the monsters Fenrir, Jormungandr, and Hel, with the giantess Angrboda. Some of Loki's misdeeds are portrayed as necessary evils that ironically lead to positive outcomes. For instance, his prank of cutting off Sif's hair resulted in the creation of remarkable artifacts, including the hammer Mjolnir. In contrast, other actions of Loki are truly catastrophic. For example, his orchestration of Baldur's death brings unprecedented grief to the Nine Worlds. After this heinous crime, Loki reveals his darkest side in a poem called Lokasena, where he insults the gods, mocks them, and expresses his utter disdain for their order. He is eventually chained to a mountain with a serpent poised to drip venom onto his face. Loki spends the rest of his days in torment, and only at the end of times will he break free to lead the forces of chaos against the gods. Loki is an anti-hero, a figure consumed by his own envy and wickedness, and ultimately a tragic character whose downfall is inevitable. Number 20. Angrboda, the mother of monsters. Angrboda is an enigmatic figure in Norse mythology, depicted as a giantess from Jotunheim with deep ties to the forces of chaos and darkness. Her name means the one who brings grief, reflecting her ominous role within the mythological narrative. Angrboda is a victim of Loki's manipulations. With his good looks and charm, Loki seduced Angrboda, drawing her into a passionate and secretive affair despite his marriage to Sigyn. 3 times she became pregnant, and we can assume these pregnancies must have been extremely painful based on the monstrous nature of the children she bore. Norse mythology can sometimes become the stuff of nightmares, with an intense fascination toward the macabre and the grotesque. In the darkness of the night, Angrboda gave birth to Fenrir, the monstrous wolf destined to devour Odin during Ragnarok. Then, she bore Jormungandr, the giant serpent prophesied to battle Thor. Finally, she gave birth to Hel, the goddess of the underworld. Angrboda is a villain of remarkable complexity and intrigue. While being entangled in Loki's schemes, she shares his rebellious spirit and demonstrates her role as a devoted mother. Angrboda may also possess the gift of prophecy, making her painfully aware of the nefarious roles her children will play during Ragnarok. Some theories suggest that Angrboda is the witch whom Odin summons to interpret the future in the Eddic poem Baldur's Dreams. Number 21. Fenrir and Jormungandr, the monsters of doom. Fenrir and Jormungandr are a wolf and a snake, the first 2 children of Loki and Angrboda. They are the brothers of Hel, the goddess of death, who will be discussed separately. From the moment they were born, Fenrir and Jormungandr were feared by the gods due to the prophecies surrounding their destructive potential. As they grew, their power and ferocity became evident, leading the gods to take drastic measures to contain them. Jormungandr was thrown into the ocean by Odin, where he grew so large that he eventually encircled the entire world, and he started biting his own tail. To Viking sailors, Jormungandr was known as the Midgard Serpent, a symbol of the ever-present danger lurking beneath the ocean's surface. Meanwhile, Fenrir was raised in Asgard, and he befriended the god Tyr, who was the only one brave enough to feed and care for him. The gods wanted to bind Fenrir, but the wolf could easily break any chains. Therefore, the gods sought the help of the dwarves, who crafted an unbreakable rope called Gleipnir, made from magical and impossible materials. Fenrir was bound, thinking it was just a game. Tyr even placed his hand in the wolf's mouth as a pledge of good faith, fully aware that he would sacrifice his hand. When Fenrir realized that he had been deceived, he bit off the hand of Tyr, his heart full of rage. This is how the Norse gods thought they could contain the monstrous forces of chaos. However, through their actions, they only delayed the inevitable. As Ragnarok approaches, Fenrir and Jormungandr will break free, unleashing their full wrath upon the world. Number 22. Tyr, the god of war. Tyr is the embodiment of bravery and skill in battle. He is also associated with the law of war, treaties, alliances, and martial order. Tyr gave his name to the day Tuesday and is connected to the rune Tiwaz. In early Germanic mythology, Tyr may have been one of the most important gods. However, in the Viking texts, he is overshadowed by Thor and Odin, and remains somewhat enigmatic. Tyr sacrificed his right hand in order to help with the binding of Fenrir. This act of bravery left him maimed, but it also solidified his reputation as a god who prioritizes justice and the greater good over his own well-being. Tyr is generally thought to be Odin's son, although the giant Heimir is sometimes considered his father or stepfather. In one of the myths, Tyr and Thor travel to Heimir's house in Jotunheim to borrow a cauldron large enough to brew ale for all the gods. There, the two gods meet Tyr's mother, who offers them clever advice, and Tyr's grandmother, an old woman with 900 heads, who despises Tyr. The story continues with one of the most famous scenes in Norse mythology. Hymir and Thor go fishing, and Thor catches Jormungandr, but Hymir panics and he cuts the rope, releasing the snake. Back at Heimir's house, the giant announces that he will give his cauldron if Tyr and Thor can break his favorite cup. Thor learns from Tyr's mother that the cup can only be broken by Hymir's head, so he breaks the cup and wins the cauldron. Number 23. Hel, the goddess of death. Hel is described in the Norse texts as half beautiful and alive and half decayed and lifeless. This is her canonical representation. However, other popular ways of representing Hel are the following: half creepy, half creepier, eerily seductive, and fully grotesque. Just like her brothers, Fenrir and Jormungandr, Hel was banished by the gods. She was cast into a region of Niflheim that has been known as Helheim, or simply Hel, ever since. Helheim is the underworld, inhabited by the souls of all the people who pass away due to illness, old age, or any death that doesn't occur on the battlefield. Unlike the heroic afterlife of Valhalla, Hel's realm is a cold, dark, and desolate place. Norse texts portray Hel as a wise and inflexible figure who demands that the rules of her domain be respected. She lives in a hall called Eljudnir and owns the following strange objects: a dish called hunger, and a knife called famine, an entrance threshold called stumbling block, a bed called sick bed, and window curtains called gleaming bale. Hell's servants are Ganglot and Ganglati, whose names mean lazy walker, either because Hell is never satisfied with their work or because they are trapped in an endless time loop by their sadistic mistress. Hell owns a fearsome dog named Garm, who guards Helheim. His role is so integral to her realm that he might as well be considered the second part of her face. Number 24, Aegir and Ran, the gods of the sea. Aegir and Ran are a pair of deities embodying the grim aspects of the sea. Aegir is a Jotun, and unlike Njord, who is the protector of sailors, his attitude towards navigation is often unpredictable and hostile. He can be linked with the monstrous life forms that inhabit the ocean, particularly krakens, which are creatures with tentacles resembling those of an octopus. His wife, Ran, is just as sinister. She's the goddess of the drowned, using a net to pull sailors into the depths of the ocean. It is said that the souls of the drowned people live in Ran's domain, a dark and spectral realm deep beneath the sea. Despite their ominous reputation, Aegir and Ran are respected as necessary forces of nature. Moreover, Aegir is redeemed through his generosity towards the gods. In his underwater hall, Aegir organizes lavish banquets for them and is famously associated with the brewing of ale. Aegir and Ran have 9 daughters, who are benevolent and personify the waves. These graceful, fluid deities are as enchanting as they are mysterious, showing that the sea offers not only horrors, but also inexplicable beauty. Number 25, Utgarda-Loki, the god of illusions. Utgarda-Loki is one of the most enigmatic giants in Norse mythology, and his name means Loki of Utgard, because he is as cunning as Loki and rules the formidable fortress Utgard in Jotunheim. He is the main antagonist in a story where Thor and his companions visit his castle, and the giant is determined to teach them a lesson through a series of challenges. Thor's companions, Loki and Thialfi, are immediately proven to be inferior. Loki loses an eating contest against a giant named Logi, while the swift god Thialfi loses a foot race against a runner named Hugi. After this, Thor is asked to drink from a large horn, but he only manages to lower the level of the liquid slightly. He is asked to lift a giant cat, but he can only lift one paw. Finally, he is asked to wrestle an old woman, but Thor is helpless and falls on one knee. The following day, Utgarda-Loki reveals that he had tricked the gods using illusions. The opponents Logi and Hugi were in fact wildfire, which is all-consuming, and thought, which is uncatchable. The horn Thor drank from was actually the ocean, and Thor's drinking is what causes the tides. The cat that Thor tried to lift was the colossal snake Jormungandr. The old lady that defeated Thor was the personification of old age, which brings everyone to their knees. With a final laughter of defiance, Utgarda-Loki vanishes together with his fortress to avoid Thor's fury. This display of superiority by Utgarda-Loki shows that even the most powerful gods can be deceived by their own hallucinations. With his ability to alter perception, Utgarda-Loki reigns supreme over the psyche, distorting reality and bending minds to his will. Also, he is so large that his glove can be mistaken for a house. Number 26, Baldur, the god of light. As a symbol of everything that is beautiful and pure, Baldur was adored by gods and mortals alike. He was so fair and bright that light shone from him, filling the halls of Asgard with his divine presence. Baldur's personality matched his outward beauty. He was kind, gentle, and just, representing the ideal of goodness and virtue in Norse mythology. However, Baldur began to experience eerie dreams in which he foresaw his own death. These ominous nightmares prompted his father, Odin, to seek the help of a dead prophetess, and his mother, Frigg, to find a way to protect him. Frigg asked every object in the world to swear an oath not to harm Baldur, but she omitted mistletoe, either because she considered it unimportant or because it was too young to swear an oath. Thinking Frigg's protection made him invulnerable, Baldur engaged in games with his friends, allowing them to throw various objects at him while they laughed as the projectiles simply bounced off, causing no harm. Loki disguised himself as an old woman and tricked Frigg into revealing the secret about mistletoe. Armed with this knowledge, Loki orchestrated his cruelest prank yet. He gave a mistletoe arrow to Hodur, the blind brother of Baldur, and invited him to participate in Baldur's game. Not knowing that the arrow would be fatal, Hodur shot it and was horrified to hear screams of terror as Baldur was struck dead. Baldur's wife, Nanna, was stricken with grief and fell lifeless beside her husband. The gods mourned Baldur's death, then placed the bodies of Baldur and Nanna in a funeral boat and watched it burn as it was launched out to sea. Odin sent his son Hermod to Helheim to convince Hel to allow Baldur's return. Hel imposed one condition: she would release Baldur if every living being and every object in the world mourned his death. After messengers were sent across the realms, it was found that the entire universe mourned Baldur, with the exception of one giantess named Thok, who is believed to have been just another disguise of Loki. Number 27. Hodur. The blind god, Hodur symbolizes darkness and winter. He is a tragic and misunderstood figure in Norse mythology and the harbinger of unintended consequences. There is no evidence to indicate that Hodur was envious of his brother Baldur. He killed him unwittingly under the influence and manipulation of Loki. Hodur was consumed by extreme guilt and sorrow after Baldur's death. He had never known light, yet he could never forget the weight of his actions as the rest of the world collapsed into darkness. Fate made it so that Odin would have a son, Vali, who would avenge Baldur. Vali grew to full adulthood within 1 day of his birth, and in that same day he mercilessly killed Hodur. As for Loki, he spiraled deeper into madness after the death of Baldur. At a feast given by the sea god Aegir, he killed one of the servants out of spite. Then he provoked the gods with insults and mockery, exacerbating his already strained relations with them. The gods went to Loki's house to capture him, and they succeeded despite Loki's attempt to hide in the form of a salmon. Number 28. Forseti, the god of justice. Forseti was revered for his benevolence and fairness, embodying the principles of justice and reconciliation. He was seen as a divine arbitrator who could mediate disputes and bring peace among gods and mortals alike. His hall, Glitnir, functioned as a tribunal and was a shining edifice with pillars of gold and a roof of silver. The Norse society was known for its harsh, punitive practices, particularly the brutal blood eagle execution. Forseti was the embodiment of this judiciary system and was extremely harsh with those who violated the law. I see Forseti as the natural judge of Loki, even though the texts do not explicitly state this. Loki has killed Forseti's parents, Baldur and Nanna. Also, Forseti's role as a god of justice makes him a fitting figure to preside over Loki's case. After a heated trial, the judge's decision is clear. Loki is to be bound to a mountain with a snake dripping venom onto his face. Loki's son, Vali, is transformed into a wolf and kills his brother Narfi, whose innards are then turned into chains to bind their father. With a shriek of despair, Loki's wife Sigyn pleads for a concession, and Forseti grants it to her. She's allowed to stay with Loki to catch the dripping venom in a bowl so that it doesn't reach his face. Number 29. Sigyn, the goddess of sorrow and devotion. Sigyn endures a staggering amount of emotional trauma throughout the Norse myths. First of all, she is the wife of Loki, who frequently lies and manipulates her, and also cheats her with the giantess Angrboda. Then she witnesses her husband being arrested, while her son Vali is transformed into a wolf and kills her other son, Narfi. Despite these immense hardships, Sigyn remains steadfast and compassionate, demonstrating remarkable grace and strength, which is why I consider her one of the most interesting goddesses in Norse mythology. Sigyn is depicted holding the vessel used to collect the snake's venom, which is either a bowl or the proverbial cup of sorrow. Whenever the vessel fills, she has to go away and empty it, leaving Loki's face unprotected. It is said that in those moments, the venom touches Loki's face, making him writhe in pain and cause earthquakes. As Loki's punishment was meant to be eternal, so too was Sigyn's devotion to him. However, there will come a day when Sigyn will take too much time to empty the cup, perhaps distracted by a vision of liberation. When she returns, Loki will no longer be there, and the snake that once tormented him will lie dead among the broken chains. Number 30. Heimdall, the sacred protector. Heimdall is the vigilant guardian of Asgard, standing at the entrance of Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connects Asgard to Midgard, the world of humans. With his keen senses, Heimdall can hear even the sound of grass growing and the wool of sheep growing. He possesses extraordinary vision, allowing him to see for miles even in the darkest of nights. Heimdall is the miraculous child of 9 goddesses, probably the 9 daughters of Aegir and Ran. He is the hero that retrieves the enchanted necklace Brisingamen, which was stolen from Freya by Loki. According to Snorri Sturluson, Heimdall and Loki fought each other over Freya's necklace while in the form of seals. The enmity between these 2 gods is an important motif in Norse mythology and will find its culmination during Ragnarok. Heimdall is called the father of mankind because he wandered the earth in disguise and visited 3 couples, blessing each of them to have a healthy son. The 3 resulting sons established the 3 social classes in Viking society. Thrall, the poorest, was a bondsman. Karl, a free worker, occupied the middle tier, and Jarl, the most noble, ruled over others. Heimdall is associated with rams and is depicted with helmet horns shaped like those of a ram. He owns a legendary horn called Gjallarhorn, which once belonged to Mimir. It is said that at the end of times, Heimdall will blow the horn to signal the start of the apocalyptic war, Ragnarok. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Ragnarok is the prophesied end of the world, a series of catastrophic events that lead to the death of numerous gods and the rebirth of the cosmos. Nobody knows when exactly it will happen, but it is foretold that its arrival is inevitable. The first notable event preceding Ragnarok is Fimbulwinter. a particularly harsh winter that will last for 3 years, with no spring or summer to interrupt it. This relentless cold will bring widespread suffering and chaos. Brothers will kill brothers in a world consumed by conflict and betrayal. Another prophesied sign is that the lights in the sky will disappear. The sun and the moon will be swallowed by the wolves, Skull and Hati, respectively. The stars will vanish, leaving the world in darkness. Great earthquakes will shatter the world, breaking the chains of both Fenrir and Loki. The giant wolf Fenrir will start ravaging the world, with his lower jaw pressed against the ground and his upper jaw reaching into the sky. His brother, the colossal snake, Jormungandr, will rise from the ocean, unleashing destruction and spewing venom. Loki will reunite with his monstrous children, and together they will march towards Asgard. His ship Naglfar will be made from the fingernails of the dead. From the depths of Helheim, Hel will rise with legions of dead minions. From Muspelheim, the fire giant Surtur will descend with his fire comrades. From Jotunheim, the Jotnar will rally behind a giant called Hrym. The guardian god Heimdall will see all these enemies assembling on the plain of Vigrid and will blow his horn to summon the gods. Odin will seek the counsel of Mimir then, together with the Einherjar and his sons, Thor, Tyr, Vali, and Vidar. He will prepare for the final battle against the forces of chaos. The Einherjar, formidable and valiant human warriors from Valhalla, will fight with great courage and skill. However, the sheer number of Hel's dead minions will overwhelm them. Odin will confront the giant wolf Fenrir, who will ultimately defeat him and devour his flesh. Odin's son Vidar, the god of retribution and silence, will avenge his father. He will wear a magical shoe made from all the pieces of leather that the shoemakers discarded. With this powerful shoe, Vidar will pry open Fenrir's massive jaws. Then he will stab the wolf in the heart. Meanwhile, Thor will battle the giant snake Jormungandr. He will slay the serpent. However covered in venom, he will take only 9 steps before collapsing dead on the battlefield. The god of war Tyr and the infernal hound Garm will fatally injure each other in battle. Freyr will attempt to defeat Surtur, but without the sword. He gave away to win the hand of his beloved wife, Gerd. He will be powerless to stop the fire giant, and will fall in combat. The last battle that will occur, after the world has turned into a giant cemetery, is between Heimdall and Loki. As someone who represents everything that is good and just, Heimdall will be seen as the antithesis of Loki. They will clash with unmatched intensity, knowing that their fates are intertwined. Ultimately, they will kill each other, falling together in a tragic end. Then, the world will be engulfed in flames by Surtur, and the ashes will be swallowed by the sea. There will be nothing but chaos. From this cosmic chaos, a new world will emerge. Fertile land will rise from the ocean, and Sol's daughter will become the new sun. The only human survivors, Lif and Lifthrasir, will leave their forest hideout and will start to explore the new world. For them, love will heal the trauma of the past. Their numerous offspring will spread across the earth. Some of the gods who will survive Ragnarok are Vali and Vidar, along with Thor's sons, Modi and Magni. Having escaped Helheim, Baldur and Hodur will also live again. All these gods will gather in the splendid plain of Idavollr, which will stand where Asgard once was. There, they will forge a new era of peace and renewal. and everything will thrive in the promise of a brighter future. We must now end our documentary on Norse gods. The list I presented is by no means complete. There are many more gods and stories to be found in the surviving sources, and while many myths have endured, one can only wonder at the equally fascinating legends that have been lost to time. Through its vividly portrayed gods and rich narratives, Norse mythology leaves room for endless exploration and imagination. For me, it has been a pleasure sharing these stories with you. I hope you too found this video entertaining. Take care.